The best goal scorers are people with a God-given talent for shooting the puck into the net. None of them consistently score fewer goals off of actual shots than Jake Guentzel. Look at this guy. What a nice young man. Being a lifelong Capitals fan, and with Guentzel being a Pittsburgh Penguin for the better part of a decade, for a few years all he could do was destroy me body, mind, and soul by scoring the most hilarious, nonsensical, crushing goals against my favorite team over and over. My first exposure to his reign of terror was during his rookie season 2016-17. Whenever I saw him score in his frequent games against my team, I thought, Guentzel had a tap into a wide open net. Or, that goal looked kind of lucky. Or soft, and so on. And over time, as he showed up in highlight reels more and more, I find myself saying that over and over and over. It seemed as if he almost always was scoring garbage goals. They all count, but the sheer frequency of this specific type of goal seemed ridiculous to me. Back then, in my adolescent and diaper-soiling moodiness, I was inclined to think that this lucky goober was just that, lucky. As he racked up impressive goal-scoring numbers over the years, I went out of my way to see how many of his goals were achieved simply by him skating the puck into a wide-open net from 3 feet away, or having the puck otherwise bounce off his unsuspecting shins and into the net. And there were a lot. Like, a lot. But, revisiting this phenomenon now in my advanced age of 26, I'm ready to look at the full numbers and approach them scientifically, or at least scientifically with gaping logical leaps. Join me as we dissect and overanalyze every single one of his regular season goals to see if we can figure out what type of goal scorer Jake Guentzel actually is. Is he lucky? Is he good? And let's also discover why this graph represents his uniqueness. For this experiment, I lumped together every regular season goal he scored into various categories based on how they were scored. Every goal fell into either goal-scoring goals, based off of clean shots, one-timers, empty net goals, deflections, breakaways, etc., and the aforementioned garbage goal, a tap-in, a soft goal, an inadvertent deflection, or anything that otherwise would have probably happened even if a dust leaguer was standing where he was. Now, to be clear, none of this is putting an asterisk on any of these goals. These are descriptive, not normative. A goal is a goal is a goal. Believe me, I've had enough of people putting subjective caveats on goals. There have been plenty of great players who scored primarily in these ways. No, this is just a classification for analytical purposes. After all, if a player scores every single goal of their career via unintentional deflections, don't you think that says something about how that player plays and what kind of scorer they are? Similarly, we're trying to discern those kinds of things about the boy. And these classifications aren't absolute, obviously. There's a measure of subjectivity in classifying them, but on the whole, I think I was pretty lenient. If there was ever a question over whether or not a goal was garbage or good, I gave him the benefit of the doubt and called it good. So, let's start with his rookie season. His very first NHL goal was a foreshadowing of the kind of goal-scoring campaign he would have in that rookie season. A total softie against Antti Raanta. From the very jump, it seemed like God himself was going to try and fill his goal column as much as he possibly could. His next 2 goals were, as I feared, tap-ins on wide-open nets. He followed that up with a deflection, and it took until his 5th NHL goal for it to be a shot that the goalie was staring down and beat him anyway. The next few were a smattering of each kind of goal, but after his 9th goal of the season, a solid deflection beating Connor Hellebuyck, there is not a single remaining goal that season that wasn't garbage. Soft, tap-in, 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 soft. Oh my gosh. Come on. 16 goals in his rookie campaign. Only 4 of them weren't soft or gimmies. 3 of those 4 were deflections. Only 1 could be considered a clean shot that just beat the goalie. Admittedly, when I first saw this data, I felt a little vindicated in my appraisal of Guentzel as a garbage collector, which is my least favorite type of goal scorer, and in my childishness, I was hoping it would continue. And into his sophomore year, it did, kind of. By my reckoning, no soft goals, and that's good, but it took until his 26th career goal to beat a goaltender cleanly where he had possession during normal play. But that's splitting hairs, so who cares? But a huge chunk of the goals were still gimmies, 9 of them to be precise, out of 22. That's over 40%. So, 2 seasons and 38 goals in. Is Guentzel just a Sid merchant, like Mark Donk and Buzz Flibbit? Another Connor Sherry or Brian Rust, who also had just appeared on the Superstars wing in the prior few years? At this point in his career, given the overwhelming amount of Guentzel goals that were simply him crossing the T's and dotting the I's of a sentence that his teammates wrote, maybe. But in Guentzel's 3rd season, 2018-19, everything changes. Jake Guentzel's single-season high balloons to 40. That is no accident. No way. There hasn't been a single 40-goal scorer in NHL history that didn't play at a 40-goal scorer's level in some way ever. So what changed? 20 primary assists from Sid helps, but there's more to it. Why is the number so high if the overall number of garbage goals essentially stayed the same and didn't grow proportionally? Well, there's no cool answer here. He just simply started beating goalies, particularly weak side shooting off the rush. That's where he did the most damage. Most people will tell you shooting back the opposite direction is both pretty hard for a shooter to do accurately and pretty hard for a goalie to read as quickly. Now, it did take a bit for him to find his groove. Some of his first few goals of the season were softies, and some saw absolutely blatant penalties go uncalled just for him. It was nice of the refs to give me material for this video, though. 7 years clairvoyance is a rare gift. But nope, he just had his shooting stick. Right on, Jake. His fourth season, the shortened 2020 season, was on pace for a similar amount and a similar dispersal of overall goal type. There were still garbage goals, but no more than a consistent goal scorer would usually get. Now, something that was interesting is that this season, he didn't have a shooting stick as much per se, but rather had a diversified portfolio of lighting the lamp. He never excelled at one method in particular, but could lean on any one of them at any given time. More on that later. It appeared that Jake Guentzel's pure shooting ability had blossomed for a hot minute, but after that prior season and a half, it kind of petered out. That brings us to 2020 to 20, the COVID shortened season. There were 19 goal scorers goals in this campaign of 23, which is by far the most forgiving ratio he's had in his career to that point. And there's a very obvious catalyst for it. It's not empty net goals, which Guentzel started to get a handful of this year and in future years, probably because he started to develop his shooting stick. No, there had been a different goal type that had been growing over the course of Guentzel's career that he had turned into an elite skill. Deflections. Look at this tip. Ridiculous. There's really not much of a pattern to them either. He might be going to the net, being pushed away from the net, standing still, facing away from play, or going towards it. Doesn't matter, he just finds a way to get his stick on the biscuit, and he can be deadly like that. Now, while the number of deflection goals had been steadily growing, it still wasn't a majority. But I think more than a handful in any given season is still pretty remarkable. Heck, the deflection king, Joe Pavelski, in both of his highest scoring seasons, only had 9. So let's keep an eye on that. We can see in the 2022 season that once again, the high proportion of gimme goals are not there for Guentzel. Instead, he's made good use of one-timers for the 2022 season. Is it part of a trend? Not really. It's kind of an outlier in his career. This season did give us this hilariously stupid goal, though. 11 of his 36 markers in 2023 were of the soft or garbage variety, and 25 were pure Genos. That percentage was about the same, 21 of 30, in his last season with the Penguins. So, at this point, I think it's safe to say that the luck that followed Jake Guentzel around in his very early career stuck with him, but largely gave way to a genuine knack for finding the net, with the overall growing amount of sick deflection goals being one of his most skilled method of goal scoring, despite him not really having a most common one. I mean, he had hit the 40-goal plateau twice, and last season in 2025 he did it a third time. Not many people in this generation of the NHL have done that, just 18 out of thousands. But in that third 40-goal season, Guentzel's goal makeup does a complete about-face, to a level of garbagedom not seen since the late 2010s. Similarly, the breakdown of goal types doesn't betray an obvious bread and butter, but man, he had over triple the amount of tap-in goals and almost double the amount of softies as he did goals after possession. That's very odd. Bringing all those numbers in aggregate, give or take a few, Guentzel has scored 16 more goals by touching the puck into a wide-open net than goals after possessing the puck before shooting. That's obscene. It's cool, pretty cool, but what does it actually mean? It means Jake Guentzel's most dangerous weapon isn't his stick. It isn't even his hands. It's his brain. Guentzel almost always does exactly the right thing wherever he is below the hash marks. There are two things remarkable about how he goes about this. The first is the nature of Guentzel himself. I've joked about how he used to look like he was 3 years old, but now he looks like he's 4. He's listed at 5'11", slightly under the average height, and 176 pounds, very under the average weight. That is not at all the kind of guy you would expect to take a crunch from Brendan Dillon, who has half a foot and 35 pounds on him, bounce off completely undeterred, and power through straight to the cage to score. Skill and speed are common tools for welterweight players to survive and thrive in today's NHL, but rarely will the tool be just being impervious to abuse. And I wouldn't even say Guentzel is particularly fast. Part of me wonders if his appearance being so different from other crease vultures plays some mental part in defenders' underestimation of his gumption. But admittedly, that is 100% speculation. In fact, his lack of size is part of the advantage. He's not super fast, but he's nimble in places where players typically are more rooted on their feet, such as around the net and along the corner boards. Go back to a highlight pack of Guentzel's goals and see how many times he's engaged with a defender in some way, and then he just manages to slip away and re-enter the play after just enough time has passed for the defender to lose him. It's kind of eerie. So while 3-year-old Jake Guentzel was probably pretty lucky, 4-year-old Jake Guentzel has both the brains to get to where he needs to be at exactly the right moment, and the brawn to endure in the hard areas for far longer than you'd assume for someone of his size. And it has launched him to 3 40-goal seasons. Maybe more in the future. But this is what goal scorers do, right? They find ways to get open around the net so that they can just put themselves in prime scoring positions, right? No. Players that score with the same kind of goal variety that Guentzel does don't score that much, that consistently. And players that do score that much have very obvious choice types of scoring that are easily quantifiable. This is every 40-goal scorer from last season. What stands out to you about this distribution of goal styles compared to Guentzel's typical spread? Alex Ovechkin and Leon Draisaitl are the one-time kings of the NHL. Kyle Connor and William Nylander have a deadly release and deadly speed. But beyond that, all of these players have the vast majority of their goals scored on the shotliest of shot types. Shots after possessions, or a one-timer. They just beat goalies. In none of Guentzel's 40-goal seasons has he even come close to that amount. He's always way over that 20 to 25% garbage goal waterline other pure goal scorers hover around. Think about the generation of pure goal scorers that we've seen in the NHL. Flashy, exciting, dynamic. It's so recognizable, and it's so dangerous. But in their ranks, somebody is capitalizing off of that fact. Somebody knows that the defense will have their eyes open for that style, and not his style. Again, Guentzel is only one of 18 to score 3 40-goal seasons since the lockout. What makes Jake Guentzel so unique isn't solely his playing style I earlier described. Plenty of players are like that. It's the number. Plain and simple. 3 40-goal seasons, half a dozen breaking 30. That many of those, with this many garbage goals, is something nobody in the NHL currently does. The only 40-goal scorer last year that even comes close to Guentzel is his teammate Braden Point. Pretty unique scorer in his own right. But Point typically scores from higher up than Guentzel does, usually between the dots and the top of the crease, so he's ahead of the net front defenseman just enough to avoid some kind of beating. A larger distribution of his goals are on the power play too, so it's a lot less likely a defenseman will take the risk of playing the body on him. He's also just deadly in the bumper position. He's closer to Guentzel than the others, but they still aren't the same. Last year, Guentzel's snipe-type goals are half of even Points. Guentzel stands alone. Probably backdoor. Guess what? He was there the whole time. You just didn't respect him enough to notice. Thank you all so much for watching. I had a great time making this video, and I would especially like to thank all of my patrons, namely Sean Taggart, Tristan Daly, Candy Kane, FZ, Crazy Canuck, Sarah, Shamu, RJ, Balling Kitten 43, Len Nicolosi, Pierre O'Connor, Wolfie256, Infernos Gaming, Steely Dan 32, Stuckmund, Pylon Zin, It's Me Kowalski, Ethan Johnson, Gabriel Arrigo, Amazing Kook 143, and Eric Sheldon.